Sarah Dahlinger makes monsters. She's a creature designer for games and for books, including her own upcoming project, Zero Drag Murder Mouth. She knows how to make them weird, she knows how to make them creepy, and we've got her next. This week's interview on In Real. So, hey, Sarah, welcome to the show. We're here to talk about your art and you as an artist, and then whatever other things pop up in this weird post-apocalyptic quarantine landscape we find ourselves in. So first, how you doing?
I'm doing really good. Thank you for inviting me to come do this. This should be fun, so I'm looking forward to it. And
Awesome.
like I said, post-apocalyptic, so I mean, we're doing our best. So,
Tell me a little bit about your art. I love monsters and I love like really cool creature design. Um, and so that was one of the things that first drew me to your stuff. Talk to me a little bit about creature design and monsters. Let's start there.
okay, sure. So, I think all creature design is kind of centered in or begins with the natural world, or
Okay.
like natural biology and anatomy of real creatures that live today. And one of my teachers was Tara Whitlatch, and that was like her big shtick. And she did all of the Star Wars creatures and monsters and stuff like that. And she goes way back with that philosophy, and I think it holds true. And it was funny when I started learning from her. It was like stuff that I was kind of thinking of on my own, even as like a little kid. And then I was like, right, exactly. This is where I'm going with. So I just kind of fell into that philosophy really, really easily because even as like a kid, like my brain was kind of already there. And so I think really all creatures and monsters need to be based somewhat in the real world. They need to, be able to hunt. They need to be able to like find mates. They need to be able to fight off adventurers because that seems to be a problem monsters typically have. And get food and survive like a tiger or a lion or a bird or anything like that.
Why is that important? Because the creatures that you're doing and the monsters and stuff aren't real. I mean, we're talking about fantasy creatures and monsters and all sorts of weird alien stuff. Why is it important to ground it in that reality?
I think it's because it helps people understand, like if you ground something in reality, it helps people make like the logical jumps onto how that creature would work. And have you ever heard of, it kind of falls into the purple cow theory? Have you ever heard of that?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so if I tell you that I was driving into work today and I saw a purple who's a what's it, you'd be like, I don't care
Hmm.
what, I don't get it. But if I said I drove into work and there was literally a purple cow in the field,
Okay.
you'd be like, oh, whoa, that's weird. Like I get it more
Mhm.
now. So because you're grounding it in reality, because people know cows aren't purple, then they kind of see like, oh, okay, this is a creature that could be real, but it's unique, but it's a monster.
And it gives something to people to grab onto as kind of like a starting point. Like, okay, I have cow in my head, and we can go from there. Um,
Exactly.
is there a danger? I won't even ask it that way. Like, how do you balance that? Because if it's too real, you lose some of the sense of wonder and the whatever weirdness or menace or whatever you might be going for. How do you balance that as an artist and as a creature designer?
I think when it comes to that, the way I like to do it is the way the first I ever heard it was the Disney animators, and it might be in all of the different places, but when they make a pose, they push it like till it's just like too far, and then they dial it back a little bit. So when you're thinking of a creature, and your artists usually work in thumbnails, so I'll be thumbnailing out ideas, and I generally push it till I'm like, I don't like that anymore. It's gone too weird,
Hmm.
and then you take it down a notch, and that's usually your happy point.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um, what do you think makes for a cool monster? Like, what sort of stuff do you like?
I am a sucker for anything with scales and anything like aquatic, fishy, reptile, like amphibious. kind of thing. Like that's usually what I get asked to do a lot of Cthulhu art because of that, which is right up my alley. You know, yeah, and my personal project is all like alien creatures, and a lot of them are aquatic. So um, yeah, that's me. I'm like my favorite place to draw, like in the entire world, is the New England Aquarium in Boston.
Okay.
Yeah, you go and the lights are dim and you draw all these fish and aquatic creatures, and it's just the best.
There's something like menacing about the inky depths of the sea. Like anything could be down there, you
Yeah.
know? Like,
Yeah, and I like thinking about it. It's like creature designers are probably just a little touch weird. So like probably, you know, and like you think about like the horrors that could live in the deep, and even as like a little kid, I'd be like, that's cool. I don't know why.
when I was a kid, I was growing up, you know, I went to summer camp and I'd swim, and the worst was when you felt like a little piece of like kelp or something just lightly brush your toe, and you can't see because the water's dark and kind of murky and sandy, like a lot of silt and stuff in there, and you don't know what's down there, and it's just there is nothing freakier to me when I was growing up. Like that used to scare the hell out of me, and I love swimming in lakes and stuff, but I was like, there is something down there. And
I did
it's
the same. Yep. It freaks me out. It's just but then I draw them.
right. You can like
Yeah.
exercise those monsters. Like that's cool. I lost a foot, but I've been inspired.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome.
Yep.
Um, so let's say I've hired you, and I'm like, okay, it's an alien world, and it's I don't know, it's Tatooine. You know, let's go with something easy. Deserty planet. What sort of things are you picking up on to incorporate into that creature? Then, so you know it's a desert planet. You know, maybe I told you a few other things. There's a lot of human type creatures running around there, so it's inhabited. A lot of rocky outcroppings. It's got two suns. Um, that's all we really know about Tatooine. And
Yeah,
for a place that's as far from the bright center of the galaxy, they sure get a lot of action. But
they
whatever.
really do.
Let that go. So when you're given like that type of information, where does your brain start going?
I generally start always with like the thing you want to accomplish with the creature. So like is it a mount? Is it a predator? Is it a beast of burden? Or is it like something kind of insignificant? Like you know how in Star Wars there's always like these tiny little creatures like in the
Yeah.
corners of places? Like is it one of those weird little one-off things like a flavor creature or something like that? And then once I know that, then I know where I'm going to base it on. So let's say it's a mount and we need to ride it across the desert. Like what is those raiders, right? Those are on
Yep.
Tatooine.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Tusken
So
Raiders. Yep.
yeah, Tusken Raiders. So like for that, they were probably like, okay, you know, they've got that big shaggy coat to protect them from the sun, and they probably have adaptations to allow them to go long distances without water. So then, like, I would start looking at camels, and you
Okay.
know, and then that kind of like informs the other thing. So then like once you know your base, you're like, okay, it's a mount and it has to be able to survive in the desert. You're like, okay, cool, great example is a camel. So you start with a camel, and then you're like, what else can I pull from it? Okay, well, other thing that lives in a desert is a lizard. Okay, cool. And then you start pulling from there, and that actually probably is how they ended up with dewbacks. Like,
Yep. Yep.
and that's like, and you kind of like you have your base, and then you start tacking stuff on, and then once you
Okay.
have your, and then you once you're done with that, then you start with your sketches. Sometimes you even start earlier than that, and then you're like, okay, let me add a bit of this, add a bit of this, push and pull it here, and then you start playing with proportions too. And proportions are great to communicate, like, is it a nice animal or is it aggressive animal or whatever. You can do
Yeah.
a lot with those, and that's just kind of how the flow works.
So that's something I was going to ask you. Like, are you thinking about the creatures' personalities? Are you thinking about like, well, maybe this one's a little more like a raccoon is more clever than, say, I don't know, a lizard. You know, I mean, of
Right.
some sort. Like, so are you thinking about those elements as well? So it's not just the physicality of the creature, but it's stuff that maybe won't ever even appear. Like, let's say it's for a book. Obviously we're not going to see this thing running around, and it might just be some spot art that's in the corner of a book or something, just to add a little color. But are you kind of taking it to those next steps and sort of giving it a little bit of life when you approach the design of it?
Definitely. Yeah, that's really important. And the raccoon and the lizard is a great place to start. So like if I'm going to do a creature that's kind of raccoon-like, I'm thinking, okay, I mean, it's clever. It can trick you. It's got good little hands and
Right.
everything. So I'm going to have a pose where it's doing something like maybe it was caught, and it's got like
Right. Okay.
that kind of look, or maybe it's got its little hands up and it's like looking like maybe I'm going to steal something. And if I'm doing a lizard, well, it could be, is this lizard just kind of something that chills out on this side of the screen or the side of the book? It's no big deal. Maybe he's kind of not that interesting, or maybe he's like a Komodo dragon. So then maybe he's like kind of up and alert looking. Maybe he's like opening his mouth wide, like threatening you or something like that. So I always try to add. You always want, even if you've got like one image, to kind of someone to look at it and know what it would be like if they like walked around a corner and it was there.
Okay. What got you into creature design in the first place? Like, why? There's so much art to explore. What pushed you in that direction and got you interested in it?
I think a little bit you're born with it, or at least I was. So when I was a little kid, like we're talking 2 or 3 years old, the first thing I learned how to turn on the TV was PBS nature documentaries.
Okay.
So like going back to when I was too tiny to even know like what they like, I knew the noise that it would make when it would start, like the intro music, and I would be like, oh, that's the thing I want to watch. And this is like, I'm a toddler at this point, so I think I
Right.
was always drawn to it. And then as I got older, like I always liked animals. And then as I got older, you start reading fantasy books because my dad was a huge Tolkien fan. And so, like I read The Hobbit, and then once The Hobbit is like my gateway drug. It's like
Okay.
once I read that, I was like, wait, there's more of this. And then it was just like kind of like a natural progression. Like, oh
Hmm.
my god, I know all this stuff about animals, and you can make all these creatures, and it just one thing led to another.
Um, do you have a favorite like monster or creature? I use the term monster, but not every monster is monstrous. So take that broadly. But is there a favorite for you? Not that you've done, but like
Like as a whole, oh
like
man, that
or
is
do you
so.
or what are a couple go-tos?
I'm really, really well known for liking the Sahagwin. I think that's how you say it. They're basically deep ones. Like again, going to my themes of scaly, horrifying from the deep monsters.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm a big fan of those. I've always liked the mind flayers. They're
Mhm.
pretty cool. In terms of um, like eye-opening art experiences, the dragons that Todd Lockwood did in the D&D 3.5 Monster Manual,
Yep.
when I saw those, that was like the first time I was like, I want to do this.
I did a movie called Eye of the Beholder, and it's about the art of Dungeons and Dragons. And I talked to a lot of D&D artists, and one of them I talked to was a woman named Bryn Matheny.
Oh, I love
I
Bryn.
think you know Bryn, right?
Yeah,
So
she's wonderful.
Bryn is great. Bryn does a lot of monster design, but she said the same thing. She said a sort of moment for her, like a zeitgeist shift for her, was seeing Todd Lockwood's Dragons. And I find it interesting because she tends to approach creature design in a similar way, building out from like extrapolating from sort of realistic things. But that's what Todd does. I've talked to Todd a lot about this, and this idea, like his dragons, he was like, well, you know, they don't need shoulders that are like a human's, and they don't need these grasping hands. So he started incorporating feline elements and stuff. I mean, what was it? Was that something you were seeing early on, that like kind of uh, more animalistic and anatomically sort of interesting approach? Like, what was it about Todd's dragons that were clicking for you?
It was exactly what you just said. So
Mm.
when I first saw them, I want to say I was about, this is probably like early high school for me. So I'm like just starting to kind of become an artist. And when I saw those dragons, they were the first dragons that I had seen that had that feline
Mm.
element.
Hmm.
And like they had the real anatomical look, like the way the muscles interplayed and the way he placed the wing next to the shoulder and stuff like that. And I was kind of too young at the time to know why I liked it, but I was like, those are my most favorite dragons ever. And then I read an interview that Todd did years later, and he's like, oh, because I based them on cats. And I was like, of course that was why. you
Everyone
know
loves cats.
yeah, but like when you're a freshman in high school,
Yeah.
I didn't understand why I liked it at
Right.
that point. Yeah.
it's interesting that he went to cats for it. You know what I mean? Like, um, and maybe you can talk a little bit about this idea. Like, when he was approaching dragons, you would think, okay, I'm gonna look up lizards. You know, I'm gonna look up these sort of obvious things. But he went to a different creature entirely. Is that something that you do a lot to throw this kind of variation and this like kind of anatomical variation into creatures? Is that like a go-to trick?
I think it is, and it's one of those ones that like it's kind of hard to do
Yeah.
because when like you would obviously like I think for a dragon you'd be like, oh, like a crocodile or a Komodo
Yeah,
dragon
yeah, yeah.
or something like that. But he went with cat. But if you think about it, you're like, okay, a dragon, like dragon's not dim-witted, dragon's not slow, and like that's when you kind of start paying attention to like what's going on in the head of the creature, and then you can use that to kind of inform the form. And I would say that as a personal creature designer there, I haven't gone too far out there. Like I've never intentionally been like, oh, this is normally a reptilian thing, but I'm gonna use dogs or whatever. But I might be doing it subconsciously too.
Right, right.
But it's definitely something that's like, it rattles around in there sometimes.
What is so fun about designing creatures that keeps you coming back to it?
I think it's one of those things where it's like you never gets old. Like you can always do more. Like and you can even revisit it too.
Hmm.
Like I can make a creature and then be like, you know what? I can completely change this into like a different thing that lives in like a different environment or
Right.
something. I think with me, I think a core element of my own being is that I don't like to be bored. Like I've left very stable jobs to not be bored.
Right.
And
Right.
like I used to be a medical graphic designer,
Okay.
and I did that for like 3 years, and then I was like, I've learned everything I can here.
Hmm.
And then I knew a lot of people that were like, just ride out that sweet, sweet, easy, chill job. And I was like, I'm really bored. I'm gonna go make creatures. Like, it's never boring, and that's
Right.
what I think the thing I love most about it.
Is there, and you don't have to name names, but is there like a trap that you find some creature artists falling into in terms of designing monsters and stuff?
My big my big thing is giving human shoulders to four-legged animals, because our shoulders are like ape shoulders, so we can
Yeah.
go out really, really wide and we can like do all the swinging stuff. And a
Right.
cat and a dog, animals like that can't. But it's really in it. It's we see so many human shoulders, or it's like in
Mm.
our brain. So you're gonna draw a cat, and it's got like a human shoulder. And for me, that's like a glaring, horrible thing. Like unless it's one of those it's like one of those creatures like demons. They can
Right.
maybe go on four legs and then they can rise up and be
Okay.
on two and attack you with like a sword or something.
Right.
Then that would make sense. But if it's like a cat like being or a dog like being or a horse like being and it walks on four legs, then naturally the shoulder is positioned to the side of the body. And yeah, it's don't put human shoulders on animals.
What about the cat that's, hang in there, like the old motivational posters?
Oh yeah,
I
like
mean,
cats can do that. They're
that's
stretchy though.
that's true. That's true. Cats
Yeah.
cats are basically blobs with bones and claws. What are you working on now? I mean, so I'm seeing like in your posts, you're constantly referencing a project of yours, Zero Drag Murder Mouth. Did I
Yes.
get that right? Yes.
Yeah, yeah, you did.
So, um, what is Zero Drag Murder Mouth?
Okay, so Zero Drag Murder Mouth, and the subtitle is Alien Sharks and More, is me making a whole bunch of different creatures that live in different environments. So
Hmm.
the premise is there's these six scientists, and there's no humans in the book because I see a human every day. They're all alien scientists. They get this grant, and the grant allows them to go to these far off worlds where they can do their studies. So the unofficial accounts of each scientist in these worlds, and they go, and when they go, they always encounter a predatory shark-like creature or like sea monster-like creature, and then a um, creature that thing eats. So some type of prey animal, could be like a bird or a pig or
Right.
something like that, and then a humanoid creature, so like the native inhabitants of this land. And the native inhabitants, I don't mean like they, like some of them are spacefaring, like very technologically advanced, and some of
Right.
them aren't, and like all through that. And it's the story of like written by this scientist as they go, and I cover 6, each chapter is a different person and their adventures.
Is this something you're working on now? Is this out yet? I mean, what are your plans for it?
Yeah, so I'm currently working on it. I have 2 chapters done, and I've started the third. And I right now it's hosted fully on my Patreon. And then when that's all said and done, I want to do a Kickstarter and actually get it printed.
Where's the title come from? Zero Drag Murder Mouth. I mean,
Okay, yeah.
I've always liked the title. It's like evocative and slightly disturbing and a little bit like open-ended.
So again, my nature documentaries. There was a nature documentary on Netflix just called Shark.
Right.
And in Shark, they talked about how mako sharks have a coating on their teeth that makes them have zero drag
Okay.
on
Oh, huh.
on their teeth. Yeah, so they swim around with their mouth open, but because of this coating on the teeth themselves don't hinder them while they swim. And I started joking around on Facebook with it. And like my punchline at the end was, I want a zero drag murder mouth. And I have a bunch of
Uh,
scientific friends, and they were like, that's my new most favorite scientific term, zero drag murder mouth. And it was months later before I got the idea for the book, and then I was
right.
like, oh, I know the title.
It is a title in search of a book.
Oh.
That is awesome. So before you mentioned a couple things, the mind flare, and so are you a gamer?
Yeah, yeah, I do. Mostly not as much as I used to be because I do a lot of art nowadays.
Right.
But yeah, D&D, I've played Pathfinder. I really like Fate nowadays
Hmm.
because you can just like play it immediately. So that's mostly what I've been doing.
So this is a question I ask all my friends who are artists and also gamers. Are you the person at the table who everyone comes to like draw their character?
No, because
Oh, wow.
I've got boundaries.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
We had a friend when I was running a game a few years ago. One of the guys at our table was an artist, and he would draw your character for beer, so it worked out pretty well. So
That's pretty
here's
cool.
your 6 pack. Cool. Here's your character. Awesome.
Yeah.
Um,
No, that's I totally get it. That's cool. But it's like one of those things where because I do it professionally,
yeah.
it's like you gotta have some separation, you know? And if I'm playing, I'm playing. If I'm working, I'm working.
Do you have like 5 great movies or books that sort of have cool creatures in them? Like, what would your 5, like, this is like, if this is like a TV show, it's the listy portion. So, like, I'm glad this gets edited, but yeah, like top 5 kind of places to go to see cool monsters and stuff. And it can be movies, it can be books, it can be comics, whatever.
Okay. All right. So I'm gonna name some movies, and
Go
they
for it.
might not be the best movies.
That's okay. Some of the best movies have some of the coolest production designs. That's all right.
People might question my taste. But anyways,
That's okay.
one of my favorite creatures is from the movie The Relic. Do you remember that one?
Oh
No.
yeah.
So I like that one. I love the werewolves in Dog Soldiers. They are my favorite werewolves. Then of course Tremors. I love Tremors.
Yeah.
So that would be for
Graboids are like modern
Graboids.
classics.
Love my Graboids. Um, as far as horror movies, I actually really love Pumpkinhead.
Okay. Yeah, yeah.
Yep. So that's 4. And let's see. Oh, another one of my like moment like books. The aha moment books. Wayne Barlow's Guide to Extraterrestrials, and then they have like fantasy. Like
Yep.
two. There's 2 books, and those would be where I'd start. And then I'm gonna add more.
Okay.
Anything by Tara Whitlatch. Oh my god, I think I have all her books.
The Barlow books are awesome. I remember being a kid and stumbling on those in Walden Books. Like, Walden Books was my go-to for seeing cool monsters because we didn't have museums, we didn't have the internet, we didn't have anything like that because I'm old. So we'd go hang out in Walden Books and like just flip through game books and stuff. And when I saw
Cool.
Barlow's stuff, it was like, holy crap! Like, these are all the amazing creatures that I read about, like in the Tripod series and all these other books. And the way he brought them to life, I just thought was so imaginative and so compelling. It was really, I love his work and I love his books.
I
Those are
agree.
great.
I think that was his book was like the first book, like art book I ever broke a spine of because
Mm-hmm.
I looked through it too much. Like that's how much I loved him. So
What advice do you have for people who want to go out, who are like artists who are out there? Because a lot of people watching this are probably artists or who are people into art, or fans of art like myself. But what's like the sort of key advice you give other artists when they want to go out and like design creatures and design monsters and things like that?
okay, cool. It's like most creature designers are going to tell you the exact same thing. We have like
Yeah.
this game plan. So you study real animals. That's like the number one, and real animals and their anatomy.
Mm.
And you can do that. Life studies are the best in almost any sort of art. Like going out and actually seeing them in the wild is the best, or at a zoo or aquarium or whatever. Um, yeah, then you focus deeper in on the anatomy. And as far as classes, the two that I recommend are the schoolism class with Tara Whitlatch for creature design, and then
Hmm.
for human anatomy, which actually plays a good amount of role in creature design too, because there's a lot of humanoid monsters. Is Scott Eaton Online is like an awesome human anatomy class. So that's what I would tell people to do.
Looking at like where your career has gone so far and stuff, what's been most exciting for you, um, over the last however many years, however you want to kind of define this, but as it relates to art, as it relates to the stuff that you're working on, what's been most exciting for you so far?
I think the most exciting thing again is going back to the it's never bored. I'm
Mm,
never bored. Because when people approach you with a creature design, in general, they're kind of like, I have a weird thing in my head. I know you make weird things. Can you make this weird thing like come to life? And that's like a cool, just like a cool concept,
hmm.
and I really like it. And also, you get to explore different worlds. And when you're making creatures, sometimes it can be super collaborative because the people are like, I need it to like do this function,
Right,
and then
right.
you're like, well, here's all my ideas on how it could solve this problem for you. And the problem might be, how can I kill as many adventurers as possible? But that's still a problem that needs to be solved.
That's true. That's true. Um, um, you know, that's an interesting way to put it. Lead with the gore.
No.
So, quick couple bunch of gaming questions. What kind of characters do you like to play? Because you can't play monsters all the time. Although
No,
you can play like non-humanoid characters and stuff, I guess. But what's your go-to?
my go-to are always like ranger kind of things in everything. Like I larped for a period of time. I was like a ranger. I've played rangers in different tabletop settings. Sometimes I'll branch off, but in general I'm like typecasted as like a ranger, which, I mean, surprise surprise.
It's that whole animal thing, I
Yeah.
guess. Do you have a go-to race? Let's say it's D&D or Pathfinder or something like that, like the kind of traditional fantasy game. Do you have a go-to?
I always dig humans because I like that additional what is it, ability point.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Uh,
or a monstrous race. If they'll let me play a monster, I'll play a
right.
monster. But if I
Okay.
can't play a monster, then I'll play a human.
Got it. Got it. Got it. Got it. All right. Um, okay. Last question, I think. I'm gonna go with last question. There is a monster outside your door, a classic monster from history, let's say, or a archetypal monster of some sort. Um, it's outside your door. You know you're going to get eaten. What kind of monster do you want to have it be that finally eats you?
Ooh, let's see.
This is going out in style.
This is going out in style. I'm gonna have to say something big. So archetype monster, maybe go with the dragon. One, because before I get eaten by a dragon, I can be like, that is a cool looking dragon. And I have a moment to appreciate that. And then
Nice.
I imagine the death would be like, like utter, like, because if it was just me, I'm
Mhm.
like, what am I gonna have, like my stylus pen? Like I'll be like, they can't
Right.
fight off this. I can't fight off this dragon. So it'll be like, boom, breath weapon dead, or boom, eaten dead. Like I don't really want to suffer. Like I don't want like an ooze death. You know?
That's true. That slow dissolve of like a gelatinous cube or something.
Yeah.
Me. Also, when people talk about it later and they're like, "Oh, Sarah, did you hear she was eaten by a dragon?" That's pretty cool. It's like, "Oh,
Right? Yeah.
wow, wow, nice." So that's
I'd even
good.
have I'd even have some friends who were like kind of doing the solemn nod and be like, "That's how she would have wanted to go."
Awesome. This is a totally morbid way to end an interview. So I'm gonna spin one more out. Classic monster gets to be your best friend. Who's the classic monster that's your best friend?
Oh, oh man, classic
And it
monster
could be
gets to
anyone,
be
even
my
the bad guys. Whatever. They're your buddy.
they're my buddy.
Yeah.
Werewolf,
Nice.
werewolf.
Nice.
We're gonna have fun in the woods.
Awesome. Well, on that note, Sarah, thank you so much for being on the show. It was great talking to you. And everyone keep an eye out for Zero Drag Murder Mouth. Check out your Patreon. What's your Patreon? How can people find more information
Oh,
about you?
okay. So as long as they know my name, they can find me anywhere. There's only 5 Sarah Dahlingers in the world, and I'm the only one that does creatures. So
Wow.
yeah.
Okay. So
So
only one monstrous Sarah Dahlinger.
yes, there's only one monster Sarah Dahlinger. So if you type my name into any like Facebook, Google, Instagram, whatever, and you find the one
Okay.
that does creatures, that's me. So if you just type like it's patreon.com/Sarah Dahlinger, and that's how you find me.
Awesome. And we'll have your name all over this thing and links popping up all over. So definitely check out Sarah's work. It's super cool if you like monsters, if you like creature design. Man, it's awesome. And I love that stuff. Sarah, thank you so much for being on the show. Everyone, you should check out her stuff. Sarah Dahlinger, her name's all over the place. So just type it in. She's the one who makes monsters. Her work is awesome. And you're awesome. Thank you. Thanks for being on board.
Thanks so much.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for watching Into the Ultra. I hope you enjoyed the interview. If you want to see more, please subscribe. We drop new episodes every Tuesday. You can also check out some of my other projects. I'm a documentary filmmaker. I made a movie called Plastic Galaxy, the story of Star Wars toys, and I co-produced and co-directed a documentary called Eye of the Beholder, the Art of Dungeons & Dragons. Both are available on Amazon Prime and iTunes and a host of other streaming services. And if you want to follow along with my newest project, I co-produced it with Cave Girl Productions. It's called Igniting the Spark, the Story of Magic the Gathering, and I posted a link to that down in the description. Thank you very much. I hope to see you next Tuesday.